Are you ready to break free from the doubts and limits holding you back? Welcome to Embrace Your Value, where therapy meets coaching to help you unlock your true worth and take control of your life.
Hi, I'm Kristen, a trauma therapist dedicated to helping you heal, break old patterns, and reclaim your power.
And I'm Jen, your support coach, here to show you how to set fierce boundaries, embrace self-compassion, and step boldly into the life you deserve.
So whether you're stuck in self-doubt or feeling lost, know this: your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to own it.
Every week, we tackle real issues that challenge, inspire, and empower you to live with purpose and confidence.
So grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's get started.
Because you're not here to play small. It's time to embrace your value.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Embrace Your Value. I'm Kristen, your friendly neighborhood trauma therapist, and Jen is here as well, our beliefs and boundary specialist. And we have a special guest today, and I will let Jen introduce her. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being back with us. So today we have Marney Andes, and she is a leadership coach, author, and founder of She Lives Intentionally, a woman's community dedicated to helping women stop performing and start living with intention. With a background in corporate leadership and executive coaching, Marney challenges outdated narratives and creates space where women can explore purpose, confidence, and bold action. Welcome, Marney. We are so excited to have you here with us. So, Marney, just tell us a little bit about your story. One of the things we love to do on this podcast is just let inspirational, empowered women share their story of how they got to where they're at and how it really affects their worth and their values.
Well, I'll share a little story about how I even got into the community that I've developed with She Lives Intentionally. And of course, you shared the background of executive coaching and leadership development. One of the facilitations that I was doing with a team was one of my corporate clients. And I had been noticing it for some time, but I don't think I had really put any thought specifically into it. But a lot of the way in which I facilitate and the other colleagues that I facilitate leadership development with is we do really ask people to look at how they show up in spaces, how they react to things, and for them to really get into introspection in the way in which you say, do I do certain things because that's how I've always been taught to do them? Do I do certain things that maybe protect myself? I mean, we get into things like limiting beliefs and so forth. And what I started to see really clearly when I was doing leadership development was when we would pair people up in those kinds of discussions and different small groups, when I would see men and women working together, I started to see some really interesting dynamics with leaders because we would be brought in to help organizations maybe help their directors or above lead in a more effective way. And what I started to notice was when we'd have women paired up with one another, they would really go deep. In fact, they didn't require much background for each other. They just really would get into the conversations and say, oh, I see that now, how I'm showing up and so forth. When two men would be paired up together, interestingly enough, it just seemed, and again, this isn't any formal research that I was doing, but I would observe things where you would still sort of see men posturing with each other. They really wouldn't go very deep. They kept it very work-related, very surface-level conversations. And then I would see a different dynamic, even more so with women and men that were paired up with one another. And you would see women who would go there in their conversations, and the men would go there too. But what I felt like was that women were actually holding the space for them. So it almost turned into that woman then became a coach for that man. Now, I realize that I'm saying some things and I'm making general statements around this, but I would see it over and over in these dynamics. And so, for me, as somebody who was doing organizational development, somebody who was facilitating leadership development, I thought to myself, what would that look like if I only had women in the room? And so it started me on a path of just genuine curiosity. And it started me on a path of developing workshops for women. I still do corporate workshops for both men and women leaders, but it started me down this path of doing this with women. And I always share this with people is I started to find my worth out of that in two ways. One, because I had seen it and acknowledged it, I thought, let me try this. So it felt good for me to be able to do that for other people. But it also gave me the opportunity to reflect on those experiences and think to myself, how many times was I like those other women in the room where, if I was paired up with a woman, I probably was really going deep. But if I was paired up with a man, was I suddenly almost feeling like I had to coach him? And so it's just been a really interesting journey for me in that space. And that's really been the last 10 years for me. And so much of what I write about and what I share with the community of women that I've been building is those experiences. And so I thought that would be really interesting to share with both of you today, because that's what really kind of got me into this work, was just noticing that in my, what I would call regular professional work, and saying, what do I want to do with that now that I've seen it?
I love how observant that, we kind of have to be in that space, right? When we're doing those types of things. But the dynamic that you noticed, I see that too, right? And I think for me, on my side, it's like, how vulnerable are you prepared to be in front of a same gender person versus an opposite gender person? And what does that say about our society as a whole, even? And since I really mostly work with women and I do a lot of my group coaching around women, like with groups of women, I've been really impressed over the last probably 6 to 12 months at how much we can bring a new woman in and how quickly she's ready to open up and be a part of that space, versus when I do one-to-one coaching, they'll open up really quickly. But even the guys that I do some one-to-one coaching with, it takes months to get them to do some of the deep level work that you're talking about. So yeah, it is really interesting. And really, for anybody out there listening, one of the other things I really picked up from Marney's story is that if you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you noticed how much she lit up when she realized that this was her work, this was her passion. And she was following it because she had a curiosity. She wasn't judging what she saw. She was really curious as to what that looked like. And when we look at life from a standpoint of curiosity versus judgment and criticism, it really changes everything. So when I was watching you, Marney, I was noticing that, and I just really loved it because it was just such a beautiful transition for you. Like, it just really made you, I don't know, it was just gorgeous. So I loved it. I just really wanted to point that out. So if you didn't catch it, you might rewind this and go back and look at it, because it was really great.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been an interesting journey, because I do light up when I think about it, because it gets me excited to be able to even point out the things that even both of you sort of like summarized at the end. You do see differences with people. And I think it's been both a joy for me and something that I thought, oh, I could really lean into this. I can write a lot about this. I have a lot of personal experiences around it. But it's interesting because it's also brought up other emotions for me too. And I'm sure both of you maybe see these things in your work too, where suddenly when you start to see certain dynamics or you hear certain experiences that are happening to other people, you start to go, oh my gosh, where did that show up in my life? And what has that looked like for me? And so as I shared it, as I started to notice that, it was like, how many times did I just not follow what I wanted to say or what I wanted to do because I thought I was in some sort of dynamic where I had to socially be acceptable or whatever that looked like? And the more that I would even follow that trail, I started to see, I'll just even step back for a second and say it wasn't even judging how men were reacting and how women were reacting. I just started to see it really clearly of this is what society has trained us to behave like, that the men in the room have to be very professional and they have to be very almost protective so that they can show that I'm competent about doing these things. And women have been asked to share your feelings, share your emotions. But what's so interesting in that work environment was where both of those things almost collided. Where if you're asking somebody to be introspective, a man can't protect themselves. They can't show that they're perfect because the truth is none of us are perfect. So here's the first thing that they run into. And then women run into the same dynamic, which I strongly believe our workplaces have been built by men. Men have been in the workplace longer. So now we're, sort of inheriting, how do I work in an environment that's really been built for a man? And here's a woman who wants to get into her feelings, wants to say, hey, this is where I could really show up in a better way. But that's not necessarily always valued or promoted in the workplace. It just stirs up so many things. It's been interesting for me because I can really light up and then I can get really fired up at the same time. We're just like, oh, now that I see that, like, what do I want to do with that? Right.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up like the societal norms and what we've been taught since childhood, right? And for some of us, for intergenerational trauma and things like that, what we've been taught. And that's a barrier to break down with people. And I definitely see that when I'm doing therapy, or especially trauma therapy with people, is like, how can we break down these societal barriers that have been built over time, a lot of them for good reasons, right? So like if we go way back, like men were strong, men are stronger, just that's a fact. They had to do the heavy lifting. They had to do those things. And we were the gatherers and we took care of the families. We were talking about like, prehistoric times and stuff like that. And so as we've evolved in a way that we needed to. And there's been this societal dynamic recently where things are a little bit turning upside down. And I'm noticing that in my office a lot. Do you see anything like this reverse role at all in your work?
Well, I would say in our community, a lot of what we talk to, and we have a lot of open conversations, we call them community-led conversations, where there's a question that sparks it, but really it's whoever joins that conversation, it just sort of ebbs and flows with that. There's no concrete facilitator. It's interesting that you say like, we've had some of these norms put in place for years, and now we're in this sort of like shift. What's interesting that I see is women, and I would say this has probably started maybe, let's even talk 60s, 70s, when women were starting to work more in a professional workplace and leave the home to do that. Women always wanted to do those things. I think of women that had side businesses and so forth. I think what's conflicting now, which is why I think it's coming into the forefront, is that the societal norms we've been taught, we realized for the last how many decades hasn't really worked once women leave the home. It's like, okay, wait a minute. So you want the women to be the caregivers, but you can't be the caregiver and be working professionally. I mean, that for me is what came into play for COVID. And you saw it happening with so many women. It was like, oh, so we really are still holding so much of the household labor at the same time. And I think if anything, what has happened is you have women who are now more awake to that's not okay. And just because our grandmothers were willing to do that doesn't mean that we're going to do it anymore. And so we're actually in this place where I think there is almost like a perceived conflict that's going on. And really, to me, it's only us actually bringing this to the forefront going, we have to resolve this. See, so much in my work, especially with women, we'll talk about the fact that once you become aware of something, you always have the choice to ignore it. And I don't say that flippant to women, But I do say it's like you could actually ignore that. If you see that thing that you don't like, you could choose not to see it at all, right? But if you do see it and it bothers you, or you want to do something with it, now you need to do something. And I think that's what we're seeing is we can't ignore it anymore. You can't just say, oh, well, women can have it all. Well, the truth is, it was never meant for us to have all those things because we weren't supposed to have to hold all those things. If you're going to be, and I'm just going to use the example, if you're going to be parents together, you're going to be parents together. There's not a dad's role and a mom's role. There are parenting roles. And I think that is what's opening up for people. And I find that we have a lot of discussions around that in the community, which is, okay, now that I know that that's how I want this to be, now how do I navigate? How have you navigated it, Kristen? How have you navigated it, Jen? I want to hear your experiences. That's what we tend to talk about now.
Nice. And I mean, for me, I got off really easy because I didn't have kids, and not that I don't have responsibilities in doing this, but I also have a husband that was very willing to let me just quit my job and take care of all of the financial burden. So it made it really different for me. Like, I feel like I'm one of the really fortunate ones because I get to be here and do this and take care of our house, but it doesn't feel like this extra. I feel like I have less to do now that I'm running my own business than I did when I was working full time and trying to take care of things. And even though I maybe take care of my mom more since my dad has passed, or I was helping take care of my dad, like I had those kinds of obligations, but I always really looked at those as opportunities and not as much of, oh, that was just another thing I had to do. I feel like I just always got like a different perspective with it. And I guess I'm really grateful for that because it's definitely changed my view on what those societal norms look like, because I don't really see them in the same way, which is great because like we need different perspectives and we need that. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on all of that.
Well, and I would say this, what you described though, when I hear you talk about that, Jen, is what you've described in your husband is a good partner.
Yes.
So this idea
Absolutely.
was like, your husband didn't let you quit your job. Your husband sat there and went, you know what? I'm a good partner. I believe in my person that I've partnered up with. She needs to do that stuff. And heck yeah, because you've shared, I too have a husband, so I'm in a heterosexual relationship. This could go with any kind of partnerships because we have those conversations too. We have women who have wives that are in our community. And so we always go down to like, this is the point, which is if you find the right partner, that's when you start to see a lot of these societal norms wash away. But the reality is that there's still a lot of women, and if we just even narrow it down to heterosexual relationships, that are in marriages or partnerships with men where they aren't seen in that way that they can have that kind of power to do those things. And that becomes a really interesting dynamic. I don't want to say that everybody in our community has those kinds of partnerships like you just described. There's a lot of women that are coming into the community to say, I actually want to navigate this. I maybe believe I have the right partner, but they have a lot of societal norms pressuring them in this way. And so we're almost having to like unravel the stuff they've been taught for years to be the caregiver, the primary financial provider, whatnot. And then we've got other women that are completely flip-flop. They're like, I'm trying to navigate the dynamic of someone not being threatened by the fact that I am the breadwinner and I've been that for the last 20 years. I would love more women to even hear what you just described. You have a partner that cares that you get to pursue the things you want to do. And it doesn't matter, because imagine if those roles were switched. A lot of times that's what women did. Stayed home to allow men to go pursue their career ambitions. And what you just described is the fact that your partner sees that in you, right?
And he also saw how draining it was for me working a job that did not that there was anything wrong with any of the jobs I ever worked, but did not cater to what I needed as a person and really didn't give me anything. They just didn't fuel me. And so he knew, like, as soon as I quit, he was like, oh, you can't ever go back. You have to make this work. And that's really what this has all been about for me. Not just making it work for our family, like our dynamic, but making it work because that's the impact I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And so that's where it gets super exciting because he gets to see that. So here's a small example. Like I had my book launch party this weekend, my in-person one, and he did a little toast for me. And one of the things he said was how amazing it was to see me really step into the woman that I am and build this business, because he gets to watch it from a whole different view that anybody else gets. And he did say that I put a lot of boundaries on him, which he's probably right. I probably do at times, but he gets to see that. And so it was really great to hear his perspective, because he doesn't always share that with me. He tells me how proud he is, and he is a great partner. And you're right. He didn't let me quit my job, but I felt like he was letting me quit my job because I wanted to quit it a couple of years earlier.
Right.
But I get it. I get it. We had to be in a certain spot, and I totally get that. So thank you for that reframe, because I definitely want to reframe that one, because that's good. But he's a great partner, and we do most everything together. Like we both have to be on board. And yeah, I love that.
Well, congratulations on I knew your book launch was coming up really soon, and that's just a huge feat. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I also think about, like, since a lot of women are listening to your podcast, that they might hear that and think, wow, she just described a community that talks about it. Jen just described her own relationship where she has somebody who's a partner in that way. And I want to acknowledge the fact that not everybody has that partner, and they maybe are starting to realize that. And I think that's part of the power of also finding a community, whatever that community is for you, that maybe can help you talk through these things. It's not easy for me to say these things, but it is really straightforward me to say, you need to surround yourself with the right people that can help move you forward. And sometimes we find out, which is hard. I found that out in my life. This is my second marriage. I found out my first marriage wasn't the right support that I needed. And actually, not even that he's a bad person. We still have a relationship with one another, but you just start to identify some things that don't work for you. And I know a lot of your work, Jen, has been about setting boundaries, being able to say no to certain things. And I want people to hear, one, that when you hear people talk about the fact that they have healthy relationships, that's a good thing. It can also be one of those things where you're like, man, why don't I have that? And now what do I do? Because what they just described is something I don't have. And again, I'm not saying there's a ton of people that are in this negative space, but I think what it does is helps you see, well, if I have relationships that aren't supportive, like what I've just heard, then it's an opportunity for me to figure out, how do I set those boundaries? Maybe it's because somebody doesn't even know that they're not providing that for me and I need that. Maybe just a matter of voicing it, I would have that kind of partner. Or I go down the track and find out maybe that's just not the partner. So I think it's so helpful for people to hear that, one, they need to see examples, but two, if they're hearing not themselves in those examples, not to be distraught about it, but to maybe be an invitation to explore it more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I have a whole other dynamic where I'm a single mom. And so I'm both mom and dad. His dad passed away. So it's like I have to do all the things. I have to be a good partner to myself. And there's that to navigate too. We all have different places in our life. And I hear Jen's story and I hear your story. And I heard what you said about not everybody's in that negative space. And I'm going, I'm not jealous, but it's like, okay, well, that is something that I'm seeking. That is something that I am trying to find. And I will have better boundaries and do more to choose the right person versus just trying to get someone to fill the role, if you will. So I think there's all different levels of like inspiration and places where people can look to improve and look to gather information and think more about where they are, including, am I with the right partner? If I don't have a partner, what kind of partner do I like? Do I want? And that's something I talk to people about a lot, is what are your values? This is Jen, and this is a big thing, right? is like, what are your values? Do your values match up with your partner's values? And that's probably why the two of you have the healthy relationships. And just looking at those core things, those core values, is what really helps people say, okay, now how can we bring this into alignment?
We talk about this a lot in our community. It's you're coming from different backgrounds, different lived experiences. I mean, just how I show up today could look different tomorrow, depending on what happens later this afternoon, right? We could all come back and have different things that we might even be sharing as examples in this recording. And I think that to me is what I found so much of my worth by deciding, and very intentionally, to start looking at my life, whether it be work or relationships, as this isn't for me to perform in some expected way. It is to say, what are my values? What do I care about? What is important to me? And how am I going to live those things out? But also, how do I bump things up against those values? So instead of being in this sort of like weird space of, I don't know how to make the decision around that, it's less about that, because once you're really clear on your values, you might say, well, when I bump up this decision against those values, it's pretty clear to me what I should do potentially. It may not be very easy. And that may be the hard part I have to work through. But I think what all three of us, like even just being in this conversation, is, and I don't know why I feel the need to say this, but so many times when we start talking about like, how do we each navigate something, or what are the different things that we're working through right now, is too many times I think women feel like they have the need to fix themselves. And I have said this over and over again, that no one needs to be fixed. Let's just be really, really clear. Even when I say leadership development or when I'm an executive coach, no one needs to be fixed. I would guess as a therapist, you just need the space to be able to talk through it. So I always feel like that's such a strong message, especially since you have a lot of women listeners, like I do too. Don't think about this as, what's wrong with me and what do I have to work on or what do I need to get better at? It's really like, how can I put myself in spaces or conversations like this where I have people that I don't feel compelled to have to perform for, that I can just share it. And even if it is shocking, no one's like thinking negatively about me. They're just going, oh, wow, that really sucked. You had to go through that, right? Or kind of is really exciting. You launched a book. How cool is that? Like this whole idea of like, how can you put yourself in those kinds of environments to be able to navigate these things? That's what I think where I've found my worth, is when I surround myself and put myself in situations where I feel like I can do that without performing. And that's been a great boundary setting for me, because I've walked away from groups that had men and women, some groups that were all women, where I just said, you know what, I feel like I have to do too much for that group. That's not good for me anymore. I want the group where I can just go and say it. And even if somebody has a different opinion of that, that's cool, because that's what we're all here for, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's actually earlier when I made the comment about looking at it from curiosity and not judgment or criticism. That's what you want. You want people in your tribe that will love you for who you are, where you're at, meet you in that space. I was on a group call earlier, and it was an implementation call with a coach that I work with, and I haven't done anything for 2 weeks. Like, I've been working on this book launch. I haven't done anything. And so she's like, Jen, what do you need? Like, where are you at in this process? And I'm like, I'm really just starting the work. But she didn't care. She wasn't mad. She wasn't giving me a hard time. She wasn't like, well, you were supposed to show up to this call with this, this, and this done. She was like, great. And you've been busy. I've been seeing you. She's like, so you're here though. And that's what I figured. I was like, I'm going to show up. I don't have anything done, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to learn what I need to do while we're on the call. And that's really what you want when you find people that support that are yours. So it doesn't matter if it's whether it's around work or it's personal. You just want people that are going to support you and not be afraid to say, hey, what about this thought though? Like, challenge you a little bit. You want to be challenged. We don't want to be stagnant, but we really want those people that are going to love us, support us, encourage us, and challenge us and make us, so that not make us, but like really be there for us and not just phone it in or pretend. One of the things I really admire about Kristen is that she hasn't settled, that she's not just putting a man in to fill a space. Because I think that's so amazing, because I know a lot of women, and there's no judgment, but I know a lot of women that do that. They find a guy that gives them great attention and they go, oh, this will be great. And then 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, they're like, oh, I didn't put in enough work. I didn't do it. And now they're feeling stuck. And so that was one of the things that I've always admired about Kristen, because she's putting in the work and she's knows what she wants. And I love that.
This is a funny story around all of that, but I remember it was the last corporate organization that I was working in. I was part of a leadership team, and I remember we were at some happy hour sitting around chatting, and there was one of the other women leaders on the team. She had said something to me. She's like, you know what? I really think I would get married right away again, because I just feel like I need to have somebody around me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I would not do that. I think I would be the opposite. I would be like, I have so many girlfriends that I would love to go travel with and see the world. And if a man comes into that, that's great. But it was just so interesting because we were laughing about it, because she was almost like, I would get married right away. And I was like, I would not get married right away, because it's like, I don't need companionship necessarily from a man. And this might be easier for me to say because I hit the big 50 in February, and there is some truth to the fact that I think the quote's like, women over 40 just are over it. And I don't want to say anything bad on your podcast. I say a lot of bad things on mine. But anyway, it's so true for me at 50. I'm like, after a while, you don't care anymore. You're like, this is what I want. And if you want that too, then cool, we should totally hang out. But if you don't want that, like, that's cool too. Go live your life. There's 7 billion people on this earth. Let's figure it out, right? And I don't know. I feel like the fact that you just said, I admire her for doing that. Like, you need women around you that get excited for the book launch, that get excited the fact that you haven't settled, that actually tell you that and remind you of that. And so I think for me, like, the worthiness, and I go back to, you don't need people necessarily to give you those words of affirmation, but I'll tell you what, when you find the right group, people get excited for you because they just genuinely are, and they don't see the need to feel competitive or anything like that. I think it was Abby Wambach that said, just you taking a piece of the pie doesn't mean that there's less pie for all of us, that we all have that. It's not a zero-sum game. And I think that you'll know you found the right group of people, whether that's a small group or a big group, that feels those ways for you, and you reciprocate that too.
Kristen, do you have anything else you want to ask Marney, or anything else you want to bring in?
Oh, well, I could talk to Marney forever, but we don't have time for that. I feel like we're on the same wavelength a lot of times, Marney. I hear everything you're saying, and I'm like, So no, I have really enjoyed this time with you. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good just to even have a open conversation like this. I love the work that you both are doing too. I think being able to provide a forum where women can hear you having this conversation is incredibly important. So thank you.
Marney, tell our listeners where they can find you, and I'll make sure everything gets linked in the show notes as well. But we want them to be able to find you if they want to find you.
Great. You can go to shelivesintentionally.com, and on social media like Instagram and Facebook, it's shelives.intentionally.
I love that. So easy, so simple. Yes. Well, thank you again for being on here. And I don't know why I feel compelled to share this, but I'm going to. So Marney and I, we were raised in the same area. We did not know each other, but we jumped on a connection call and realized we lived, like 20 miles apart. So yeah, so it's kind of cool. We also graduated the same year. So we do have some mutual friends. And so I don't know, that just makes me feel really special when I'm on a call with her, because it's like kindred spirits or something. Like, she knows my upbringing. I kind of know hers. And yeah, we have some similarities in that. So I love it. But thank you all for joining us. Be sure you hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, let us know how we can support you, because we are here for that. And until next week, we'll see you then.
See you then. Thank you for being here with us today.
If today's episode hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because everyone deserves to know their worth.
Next week, we're diving even deeper with more insights and tools to help you break free from limitations and live authentically.
Until then, keep raising your standards, owning your worth, and embracing your value.